Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, back once again, joined by my good buddy, Jordan McPherson, Miami Marlins writer, who is not in Marlins season now, but still keeping tabs on everything, plus covering, I should call you the Marlins/Panthers writer, really, and that'd be a more accurate description there. Mr. Everything for the Herald. Jordan, how's it going, buddy?
It's going well. Fresh off of a few days up in South Carolina. Got a few days off to visit some family. So rested, recharged for the rest of this Panthers run through the end of the season. And more importantly, regional final weeks, right?
Yeah, this is it. This is the big round now. We're going to dive right into the high school football playoffs as we have in the last in recent editions. And the regional finals, as you know, Jordan, this is when all the local rivalries are settled once and for all. The big games. We've had some rematches already in the playoffs, but this is the ultimate right now for the regional title before teams then take on competition from up the road. So we're going to dive into some of those big games. Everybody's waiting for us to talk about, I'm sure, the big one down at Traz, but that's not the only one this week. There's a few where right after you're done with your turkey and Thanksgiving or whatever you eat on Thanksgiving Day, plenty of football on Friday. Not just the Dolphins and the Hurricanes who happen to be playing on Friday, but we got plenty right after that on Friday Night Football. Before we get into those playoffs, I want to send our congrats to Ferguson. Avenged an earlier loss to Braddock, won that GMAC Independent Schools Championship. Jordan, that felt good to see for Coach Gene Chu and the Falcons because he's the only coach they've had in their 22, 23-year history. I hope I'm not screwing that up. I think it was 2003 or 2002, somewhere in that range that the school opened. And as we know, there's been some lean years over at Ferguson. There's been some good ones. They won a district title in 2009, but this one got the chance to celebrate a championship. You know, it was good to see out there for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's sort of why I really appreciate when they had a lot of those teams that were in some of the higher classifications when they broke off and went the GMAC independent route to give those kids a chance to be able to make their statement, be able to make their mark, because more often than not, they got pushed to the wayside by all the big dogs in South Florida. For them to be able to have their own little league, their own league here, to be able to play their games, be able to make their own statement, and be able to have their own bracket where they could have a chance to have something like this, have a chance to celebrate. It's really great to see. Hats off to Ferguson for this.
Yeah, and if you want to catch some coverage of that, check out MiamiHerald.com. There's my story there with a few pictures of the celebration then from after. But let's dive right into this. Remember, if you're watching this show, you can watch it there at MiamiHerald.com, or you can watch it on YouTube. So we encourage you to do so, please. And thank you for those of you that have already tuned in for the past couple of years and this season. A team we don't talk about too much. Let's talk about that True North Academy team down in 1M. I mean, they pretty much handled Westminster Christian as many of us expected them to. But, of course, now, obviously, on the horizon, and we'll get to that later, is the team coming in, the national number 2 team in the country, Chaminade. But let's look at this game. And we're going to look first, actually, at Booker T Central. Of course we are, because why wouldn't we start with the team and tease to the big game? And that's talking about how Booker T took it to Central a little bit in the early going. And what I liked about this matchup, Jordan, was the way they were kind of playing poker with Central a little bit. Claudel Sherman actually went out, warmed up, was throwing passes 20, 30 yards downfield, and all of a sudden you're thinking, did a miracle happen? Did his collarbone heal up? Is this going to be an even better game than we thought? Not exactly. It was kind of a bluff, but sophomore Anthony McQueen did a good job. Here he is with an early touchdown pass that gave Booker T the lead. You kind of knew Ice Harris and those guys were going to be ready for them, even though maybe a little shorthanded like they were. But Central, their running game has just been electric this year. Jaden Ford, I think we're running joke is that he's like a little Barry Sanders out there. Here's this touchdown run to tie it up. And then it was Central's defense that kind of set the tone from that point on. Here's a couple of big plays here. One by Armando Blunt early on and another one by Ezekiel Marcelin. Those two, as we know, have been the captains, have been the leaders, picking up where Ruben Bain and company left off last year. But what's interesting about Central is what they've done all year, kind of switching back and forth with the quarterbacks. J.C. Evans hasn't really been allowed to throw much, but in this game he did. He threw a nice fade pass to Khalil Sterling late in the game, and he had 2 touchdown runs. Here's one of them that helped Central take control. So Central now sets up the big showdown we were teasing before against Norland, the highly anticipated rematch from that classic overtime game that they played a little over a month ago. Jordan, Traz is a special place. We know that when these big games happen. I think Friday night's going to be no different.
Yeah, I'm expecting another thriller there. That's just going to be, it's going to feel like a state championship game 3 weeks before the state championship game, which feels like the regional final the regional final at Traz almost always feels that way, just because it seems like whoever wins that game always ends up going out to win the state title, at least over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And Central, they're going to be coming out with a vengeance. Again, that was their game. They wanted that win. They lost in overtime. Now they're going out there to prove that they can win it when it matters the most. I remember, again, between them back in the day with them, Carroll City and Northwestern, the 3 of them always rotating, and whoever basically the final 2 in that one who made it to the regional final each year, just the thriller that it became there. Friday's going to be a fun one there, Dre. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's like Central's been the constant because it seems like, the other 2 players have kind of fallen out. Carroll City, we know, has fallen on some hard times, winless season, or 1-win season this year, and Northwestern as well. And some news this week, Michael Lee Harris out as the Northwestern coach. So they're starting over again with someone new. We'll see what direction the Bulls go in after a 4-6 non-playoff year. But now it's Norland and Booker T as well, who, even though same result as far as like how far they got in the playoffs, but this was a much better second round team than last season. So I expect them to continue on the upswing. So here's Jude Joseph talking about the big matchup against Norland and what that's probably going to be like.
Obviously, when you face a team that you've seen that knows you so well, it's second time in the playoffs. But talk about just the way the team came out today and we're able to get this done.
Like I said, we've been kind of having that playoff mentality since our last loss. For us, we said it's playoff game number 5. We got a next mentality, want to know every week this year. And the kids have showcased that in practice. It was a short week for us for the rain, but at the end of the day, we programmed them to fight through adversity. And we make the best out of our situation, especially from our neighborhood. So the kids know how to make lemonade out of lemons.
Coach, preaching the word next. Is that kind of a little mantra for you guys right now?
Yes, sir. Next, 1-0. Everybody, whoever's next has got our undivided attention. We don't put the carriage in front of the horse. We just know that whoever's next is who we focused on, and we just worry about the next game, next play, next day.
Do you like where you guys are right now? How they're playing? Obviously, we know who's next.
I think, to be honest with you, it's not even just their play because they can play football. I love their focus. I love their attention to detail. I love their way to fight through adversity, not make excuses. I love the way that they find a way to finish. And because that was a storyline between and I were playing Rocky football. And we're putting 4 quarters together through all 3 phases of the game. And the kids are showcasing that on Friday night.
One thing, I've told you this a bunch of times. I love how teams always put their best players everywhere on the field when it comes to the playoffs. Like, you're playing special teams, you're playing defense, offense, whatever. LaWayne McCoy, he does that all the time, though. And as we talked to Jube about it there, he had 2 touchdown catches, had a key interception in this game. The FSU commit had this to say after the win over Booker T.
A lot of times, in the playoffs, people play both ways, but you're used to that. You do that all the time. When you talk about just, in these games, though, when everything's on the line, coming up big like you did tonight.
I'll just say, being a leader, me going both ways for my team, just when it's a play, you just make the play. So that's really it.
Coach, I hear him saying next.
Yeah.
Want to know next.
Yeah.
How much is that driving you guys?
Just not to get happy over, probably just a win. Just focusing on the next thing, like the next task at hand. That's it.
What's this week gonna be like? You know, who's next? You know, how much that?
It's just gonna be us worrying about the small things, the attention to detail. You know, focusing up and practicing. You know, cut all the chitter chat out and just focusing.
And the Rockets know how to do that. You know, we know they're going for the historic hopefully for them 5 straight state titles, but Norland in their way. We'll get to more in that game a little bit later. But now, sorry to keep you waiting, True North. Here's some highlights from your game over Westminster Christian that we said. This Titans team, though, in all seriousness, Jordan, getting better and better every year. They seem to be taking over the world, getting good at every sport, as we talked about before. But they have some playmakers and could probably play in any class in the state, not just 1M. Zach Katz is one of them. He threw 4 touchdown passes for 322 yards. 3 of those TDs went to that kid, J-Rock Lopez, that we keep always hearing about.
It's pretty good, I heard.
Yeah, pretty good. Basketball star and football star. Here's 2 touchdown connections, the first of which that we're going to show you here. Look at the effort by Lopez. He kind of looked a little bit like one of your Philadelphia Eagles here on the tush push, except he was standing up. Here you go.
Yeah, keep going.
The thing is the speed, too. Like, Katz is just throwing – it's kind of similar to the way, obviously, on a lesser level because you're on the high school level, but the way you throw to a spot and a guy like a Tyreek Hill or a Waddle just run to it, they're doing the same type of plays, and this kid Lopez is just so versatile. He has great hands, great speed, and that connection there. But another kid I want to mention, Jonathan Bueno, we didn't get a highlight of him, but 198 rushing on the ground and a touchdown. If they can do that, if they can run and pass, I'm not saying Chaminade is on another level this year, but you keep adding to that, this team is going to be a force in the next couple of years because all those kids are just freshmen, maybe sophomores.
Yeah, J-Rock's a sophomore. Katz and Bueno are both freshmen. Katz, 81.5% completion rate this year, 34 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Yeah,
that's incredible. I know they played as middle schoolers as well. They've been doing this for a couple of years now, but as that chemistry keeps building, if they're able to keep them together, and that's the key thing, if they're able to keep that group together, which, again, we know the way the transfers happen throughout the offseason every year. We know how everything just rotates around. If True North can somehow keep this core together, this offense core together, they could become a sneaky threat in 1M over the next year or two. It's going to be very impressive what they can build on if they can keep this group together.
Right. And of course it'll be interesting to see because I know we said 1M, but there's rumors the FHSA is going to do away with this Metro Suburban and try to reshuffle it a different way now. So who knows where teams are going to land, but one way or the other, I mean, odds are maybe they don't end up with Chaminade and then it's even better for them. But the point being, yes. And there are already, we won't mention names, but there are schools already, trying to see who they can get and stuff like that. From what I've been told. But yeah, if True North can keep it together, it's going to be interesting to see. But now we're going to talk a little bit about our football look ahead to the regional final round. Before we do that, though, remind everybody our Player of the Week polls are up. Free to vote, no paywall. You can vote for as many times as you want for whoever you think is the most deserving to be the Player of the Week in Dade and Broward County. Just to run a few candidates here on the list. Enio Yapur from Norland, who we'll talk about in a little bit as well. Over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns. Seems like he does this almost every week, but in the playoffs, it's a little extra special. He did it in a 52-27 win over Monsignor Pace. Willis McGahee the fourth, yes, that son of that Willis McGahee, 5 sacks, recovered a fumble, pretty much sack parade that Columbus had to beat South Dade 34-20. Then Zach Katz, who we mentioned before, his stat line. A couple kids not on the football realm. Vi Elo for Miami Beach girls soccer. 3 key goals, 2 assists, and to lead the High Tides to a couple wins. It's soccer season already, beat Miami High and Southwest. And a kid you're familiar with, Jordan, David Chulicero, keeps winning in cross country. Wins his first 2A individual state championship, ran a time of 15:19.5, the 6th runner in Ransom Everglades history to do that. On the Broward side, Eric Nelson from Miramar Football, 230 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good. 31-7 victory over Belen, and Miramar's got Homestead next. Omar Thornton, a couple defensive shout outs here. First, Omar Thornton for American Heritage, 12 tackles, 2 for loss, 2 sacks, as American Heritage beat Kings Academy 42-7. Had to play that game on Saturday because the field was flooded on Friday night. Santana Harrison from Monarch. Monarch's always getting a lot of hype about their football. And a couple weeks ago, I know you mentioned Gabriel Birnbaum. Here's another kid, Santana Harrison, 13 tackles, 2 for loss, intercepted 2 passes, forced a fumble, had a pass breakup, and had a sack. I mean, this kid did everything in a 50-27 victory over Lantana Santa Lucis. Our boy Hector Clavijo, good season, unfortunately ran into that buzzsaw. And also, on the non-football side, Alexander Weinberg for Pinecrest, state champion in Class 1A, became the first boys golfer for Pinecrest to ever win a state title after he shot a combined 143 out there. And Christiana Coleman, a big victory for Dillard Girls Cross Country, her first state title, the Panthers' first team state title, and a big win for her because she was able to beat Ashley Fitzgerald, another great runner in Broward County for many years. So a shout out to all of them. Those are our Player of the Week candidates. Remember, you can vote there at MiamiHerald.com as many times as you'd like. And going back to football now, like we said before, let's look ahead to this regional final round because it is chock full of matchups. We're going to start from the bottom up because we're going to go transition right to that True North Archbishop Carroll game. Too much firepower to me. I mean, I like what Carroll does. They run that ground and pound, wing tee. They control the clock. The only way they're going to have a shot in this game is if they can do that and keep that True North offense sidelined as much as possible. But Katz and company, they just look so explosive. And I don't know if Carroll's defense might be able to handle it.
Katz and company, I like that. Have you used that before?
No, first time.
Yeah, you should use it more often. Again, that was good. But I completely agree with you. I mean, Archbishop Carroll, their run game obviously is fantastic. Not 1, not 2, but 3,000-yard rushers in Alejandro Azaza, Ryan Castro, and Silas Villanueva, plus Ryan Gonzalez having 600 yards as well. But I just think True North has too much to that for Archbishop Carroll to handle. I think we're going to get that True North Chaminade rematch. Oops, sorry. I think I just gave my prediction for the next one too.
That's okay. I think everybody's giving their prediction for that one. I think you even fell a step short. I think people will already, not even pencil in. I think they'll pen Chaminade into the final at this point. No disrespect to any of the teams in front of them, but let's go right to that because, like you said, we're facing Cardinal Newman. I mean, this is a good Cardinal Newman team. I always call it the new Dwyer because, Jack Daniels, the head coach over there, has turned them into a powerhouse, but they have some weapons on this team. I mean, a lot of very similar matchup. What I'm curious to see, just like last year, and again, it's not saying they won't. I think they will be fine, but Chaminade goes through these spells where 7 weeks in a row, it's a gauntlet, and they're playing all these great teams. Then, because their district is so weak, then they go the past month, 5 weeks or so, they really haven't been challenged. Every game's been a laugher, putting backups in. So this is kind of like a tough way to get kind of like your sharpness back against good competition. I think they will be fine and they'll get it done, but I'm curious to see how much they were able to heal up too, because they were pretty banged up by the end of that 7-game stretch after Coconut Creek and Dillard.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see that. I think it'll maybe take a drive or two, but again, they just have too much firepower to not do. I mean, again, Cedric Bailey, Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, Davion Goss, Arwin Jackson. That's just the offense. 22 picks by the defense, 51 sacks, 9 fumble recoveries. They're the number 2 team in the country for a reason. I think we know this one's going to play out.
Was so the way they were making turnovers. I mean, it was like not just an interception streak, but they had like a pick 6 streak going week after week. And these are against the Bergen Catholics, the Gibbons, Heritage, top-notch nationally ranked opponents. It was unbelievable to see how good they could be. I mean, I tell everybody when they ask me that they're the best team, and why? Because they can beat you in every which way. And I don't think you can say that even about the other powerhouses in town. This team, defense, offense, running the ball, passing, special teams, you name it, they have a little bit of everything and can beat you every which way. And that's why I think they're unstoppable this year. And the interesting part to me, the only question we have left is, will they make that rematch, and will they face Bishop Gorman potentially for a national title? I mean, last year Gorman literally ran all over them, but they may be a little better suited to handle them this time around. But
it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see. Obviously, we have to get to that point first.
We have to get to that point, and then obviously the powers that be that make those matchups have to make it happen, and all of that stuff. But we'll get to that in the future. But let's jump now. We're going to go to the other end to Class 4M and talk about those Monarch Knights as they face Palm Beach Central, a team that also equally stacked with a lot of talent. I mean, I think this matchup what intrigues me too. Again, like we talked about before, I think the depth of the team and the balance, I think, on the defensive side. Can guys like Santana Harrison that we mentioned before, can your boy Gabriel Birnbaum, I know you like him a lot, can those guys make the plays? Because this could be, people look at this matchup and they think, oh, maybe this is going to be a shootout, and very well could be. But even in those shootout games, there's always one or two turnovers that swing it, and then a team takes control. So who is going to do that? Is Palm Beach Central going to do that? Or are these guys that we keep talking about from Monarch going to be able to put that together? I'm very curious to see what happens. When they're going up against a team led by a lot of good juniors, a lot of 4-star guys. Kamari Williams for Palm Beach Central. There's a UM commit in that receiving core, Wade and Charles as well, and they've got their own stars on defense. One thing that's a little worrisome, I heard Bright Cannon, the slot receiver for them, it's another big weapon for Monarch, likely out in this game. He was out last week, but they're going to have to lean on Jabari Brady, Samurai Reed, and those guys. But I don't know. But I think this is the year Monarch does break through, though. And I know they're going against a team that's been there a few more times than them. Central made it to the state semis last year. But this feels like the Monarch breakout season. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. But before I get to my pick, I want to bring up one quick thing. Between 4M, 3M, and 2M, as we start breaking down these guys, we actually have a chance for 3 Dade Broward State Championship matchups, depending on how all these regional finals play out. If the main thing here, we're just looking outside of South Florida, if Sanford Seminole loses to Jacksonville Mandarin in region, I believe that's region 2, then the region 3 team, which will be Monarch Palm Beach Central, and region 4, which is our Columbus Western matchup, will be on opposite ends of the bracket, similar to what we had last year in 2M and 3M. So this potentially gives us, how things play out in this group on Friday, could potentially give us a third potential all-area state final, albeit not in South Florida this year. But now for my pick, I like what I've seen from Monarch this year. Obviously, AJ Hairston, just looking at just these last 2 games in the playoffs, 31 for 36 against Stoneman Douglas and Santa Lucius, 498 yards, 5 touchdowns, plus a rushing touchdown. Samurai Reed, 10 catches for 283 yards. The defense has had 10 sacks. Gabe Burnham, who, again, I just mentioned, yes, I like the kid. 4 of those have come from him. 6 interceptions in that Santa Lucius game. 6 in the regional semi.
Yeah.
That's, if you can do that, I like your chances. So I'm gonna go with Monarch. Obviously, it's gonna be a close game. This should be a competitive, fun game, but I think Monarch will do just enough down the stretch to be able to pull this one out.
Yeah. To go real quick back to what you were saying about the seeding, 1M, we know True North, it won't be a Dade Broward because True North is kind of locked in. If they get there, even or Carroll, whoever gets there, they'll be the 4 seed no matter what. And Chaminade being as highly ranked as they are, they'll be the 1 seed. So that's the only class that would happen in the semi and not the final. But like you said, if Seminole falls, then it's open. It's open to happen right there, assuming the teams down here win. Similar case in 3M, which we'll get to in a moment. But before we do, let's talk about that Western Columbus game, because this was a matchup. This was the matchup we thought would happen last year, and it never did because Western, we know Colin Hurst got hurt and they fell against Doral. But this year, Davy Belfort did everything he could, even on the defensive end, chased down, threw a pick, his only mistake of the game, and then chased him down. This kid's effort. I mean, I wrote a story about him.
It's unreal.
I love the heart that this kid has. His dad said he has a fighting soul. I can't agree more. But they will have their hands full. This is a Columbus team that they know themselves. And the other thing too is, will Davy play? I think he toughs it out, but he may not be 100% because he hurt his ankle at the end of that game. So they rely a lot on him on offense. So if he's playing 50, 60% and not himself, that could be a hindrance. But either way,
especially against that Columbus defense too.
Correct. Yeah, they're going to need so much. If you're limited to just running Wildcats, I know it worked for like the final quarter, but this is a whole different monster with Columbus, and now they're clicking again with Mendoza back. I got to go with them.
Yeah, I'm the same boat as you. If Dalvey Belfort was at 100%, I would feel a little more confident about potentially going for the upset and picking Western for them to make it to the state semis, but I just can't. I'm going to have to go with Columbus here. They're going to get one step closer to potentially defending their state title. Just between their defense and Dalby not being at 100%, I've got to go with the Explorers.
Yeah, and that would round out, like you said, then depending on the seeding, we'll see what happens after that. But jumping down here now to Region 3, 3M, and this is where I believe we were talking about it before. It could also be a Dade Broward matchup, but it depends on Tampa Jesuit. Tampa Jesuit is kind of that team that's higher ranked than a few of the ones down here. Not St. Thomas, but the Homesteads and the like. If they get beat, then it creates that same scenario where you could have them on opposite ends, just like it happened last year, and potentially another Dade Broward matchup. But let's start. This is an interesting game just to begin with, because we've been talking about it for weeks. Can Coconut Creek, who faces St. Thomas at St. Thomas Friday night at 7:30, can they pull this off? I mean, I was a fan of this for weeks and thinking it can happen. And I'm not saying it can't, because if they play well, if they don't give up any turnovers, if their lines hold up, which is one of the strengths of this team, especially on the defensive side, if they can keep it close, if this is either a tie game, maybe a one-score game at halftime, they will have a shot to pull it off. But I don't know, because the way St. Thomas, it feels like St. Thomas just turned it on, and the past 8 weeks have just steamrolled everybody. And even last week, the game against Ely, I thought would be competitive, 40-0 blanking of Ely, and I just can't go against them now at this point. I think I don't think they're going to go 40-0 on Creek, but I think it's going to be awfully hard for them to take out the champs here.
Yeah, I was in the exact same boat as you. I want to be able to pick the Creek upset just because of everything they've done this year. Again, they were one of the few teams that was able to keep it close with Chaminade. That gives me the utmost respect for them with what they've been able to do. It's been a heck of a year for Coconut Creek, a heck of a revival season for Coconut Creek. I just can't pull the trigger here. Aquinas is just too good. They're too stacked. They're too deep is just incredible. I think Aquinas is going to win. I think it's going to be close for a bit, but I think Aquinas will pull away.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Jordan Lyle, I can't say enough about what him and James Madison and those guys have done this year. Just tremendous seasons. And the defensive side of the ball doesn't get enough credit. They have completely shut teams down in the second half of the season. Too many stars to name right now, but shout out to them. And I think they'll probably get through. Now, is it Homestead like last year? Well, here's another rematch. Miramar Homestead last season. Miramar went down to Harris Field. They're going to have to do that again. A 5 o'clock start for those of you interested, not 7:30 in this one for the Region 4 3M final. Homestead jumped all over them. Why? Because of a couple of kickoff returns, a pick 6, I believe, last year. Mm-hmm. And suddenly they buried them 20-0, and Miramar was playing uphill the whole game, couldn't do it. Do they avoid that this time now that they have, the defense is playing well? The key to this game, of course, Cale Alexander and Eric Nelson and guys on the offensive side. Can Miramar get some traction and really move the ball on this Homestead defense? And Homestead, speaking of all those big plays, Isaac Brown had not one but 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns last week that were about 90 yards each, called back on holding calls. So if any of those ends up breaking loose, if he breaks loose on any of those, and this time it counts, it's going the Broncos' way. I mean, the Broncos down at Harris, I can't pick against them, but could be a more interesting game than people thought it might have been a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger here.
You're going to do Miramar.
I'm going to do Miramar. Yeah, no, it just from the last year when I watched them through their playoff run, the little bit I've gotten to see from afar here, I really like Kyle Alexander. I like their defense. They seem to finally be gaining the momentum when they need to be gaining the momentum. They had a slow start, but they finally started to pick things up, especially on the offense as the regular season ended and as they got into their first couple rounds of the playoffs. It's going to be close, but I'm going to go with Miramar. I'm going to pull the trigger there.
There you go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Your like Peter Griffin voice, too. Yeah. I can say that. It's great. But yeah, I'll say this, though. Homestead, since seeing them in week 1, a game they shouldn't have lost against Palmetto had they not committed 230 yards in penalties. And last week, down to the wire with Southridge, too. I mean, they're kind of mistake-prone this year. And if you can take advantage of that, then I don't disagree. Miramar will have a shot at it. I personally think the Broncos will somehow find a way, but I could see this happening because of that factor as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like before we move on from 3M, just the quick thing for the bracketing for state semis. If Aquinas and Homestead win, they'll be on the opposite ends of the bracket no matter what. Aquinas is number 1, Homestead is number 3 in terms of the seedings. So no matter what, they'll be in opposite ends of the bracket. If any other permutations happen, then we require the results from the other teams. But if everything is chalk, then they'll be on the opposite ends, and we could potentially have the rematch between them at state.
Right. I think it is Tampa Jesuit, though.
Like Jesuit's the 2. Yeah. St. Thomas is 1, Jesuit's 2, Homestead's 3, Creek is 4. So, and then the 2 from Region 1 are 5 and 6.
Right.
Miramar's 7th, and then Tampa Gaither rounds out at 8. Tampa Gaither would have a real uphill climb to have to upset Jesuit. So, so basically, it's if St. Thomas wins, they're hosting no matter what. If Homestead wins, they'll have to go to Tampa Jesuit for the state semifinal. But they'll still be on the opposite ends of the bracket.
Okay, then that sets that up. Now in this class, we're finally at 2M. This one we know for sure will be a Dade Broward final if the teams do get there to the state finals in Tallahassee. Because Gibbons and Plantation American Heritage, and then the Central Northern game on the opposite end. Let's start with this Gibbons Heritage game, which it feels like they're always playing twice every year. Here it is once again, and poor Gibbons. I was there that first game. A clear speed and talent and you name it advantage that Heritage had with all their weapons and all their young stars that this Heritage team believes they're going to have for the next couple of years and really make a run, not just for this year's state title, but for multiple titles. Gibbons has just struggled against the really, really good teams, the elite. They were beaten bad by Chaminade, beaten bad in that game. Clearwater Central Catholic came in and handled them as well. They just haven't proven, unfortunately. They're a good, solid football team, but they just haven't proven they can handle teams of this caliber. So I don't see this going any differently than it did the first time.
Yeah, I'm echoing you on that. I mean, just when you look at just all the names on Heritage team, Diabella quarterback, Byron Lewis and DeAndre Desenor running back, Malachi Toney. Oh, and by the way, all these players are sophomores and juniors.
Yeah.
So so again, I think they're gonna be able to, I don't want to say cruise, but it'll be more comfortable than the Gibbons Heritage clashes of the past. So I think Heritage will be able to get to the state semifinals with relative ease, and then we'll see where things go from there.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see Diabell and those guys, see how they handle, if assuming this does happen, the next couple weeks after that, on that march to state, because you can't call them inexperienced anymore, not after 13 weeks and the battles that they've been through, Heritage with that tough schedule. So,
yep.
And here we are, Central Norland. Who do you got, Jordan?
I've been going back and forth for probably the last hour before we started recording this. I want to see Norland finish the run. They just seeing what they've done all year, seeing how far they've come, how much they've been able to do with so many new faces, how they've gotten everybody to gel and connect and really step up to what they've needed to do. I think Central is going to win, but I'm going to pick Norland to win the game.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I kept analyzing it back and forth. I mean, here's the way I see it. I mean, and then going real quick before we started the Norland part, this team, they were called Rogues, Renegades, Mercenaries, you name it, at the start of the year. Just throw 28 new guys on the team and call it a team. They've gelled. They really have. And you saw those wins. Yes, they were down to the wire, barely surviving, but they galvanized this team and really turned them into a team. And that's the factor that I think is in their favor on Friday. Now, Central, been there, done that. I love that experience. And they're starting to play a little better now in the playoffs. But all season, I picked them. I picked them in my column this week. I picked them by a point. I always favor on the fact of experience and the history. And you got to, the king doesn't relinquish the throne until you knock him off of it. And I still don't know if Norland really can. But something all season has given me pause about this team. I hope for their sake it finally comes through in this game. And that's the quarterback play. Because going back and forth with both of those guys, I've seen some high moments for them, but I've also seen some low moments for them. Central's running game is going to have to be on point. Central's defense is going to have to be on point. They do get their kicker back. Well, they've had their kicker back. They didn't have him the first time, and it cost them a few extra points, but you can't just throw it on that. It does help, but you can't just throw the outcome on that in this game. So it's do you weigh that against Norland. And Norland, two things. Their offensive line has to play way better because I know Ennio can run around and escape pressure, but you don't want him doing that every single play. That's what he was doing every single play, not just against them, but against Booker T the week before. So their O-line, especially, they're going to come after him with Blunt, with Marcelin, with all those guys.
Yeah.
If they do that again, they're not winning this game. An X factor in this game could be the Norland running game. And I don't mean you're poor running everywhere. I mean the Juan Rodriguez kid who sparked that comeback with that third quarter touchdown, had that big long run. So those are the two factors if Norland can pull this off. I think it's a coin flip game. It's who shows up. I don't think the helmet game is not a factor anymore now that Norland beat them once. I don't think they're scared of them anymore, if they even were. Again, I'm going to err a little bit, a tiny, tiny sliver on the side of experience like I have before, but but also echoing what you said for Coach Heidelberg and all those guys. If they can pull it off, it would be a heck of a story. So if you're going to go to the game, remember Friday night, Traz Powell, they call it the Mecca for a reason. Friday night's a good demonstration of why it is at 7:30 out there. Most of the other games are at 7:30 as well. The only difference is that 5 o'clock Homestead game that we mentioned before. And also remember the Columbus Western game is at 4 o'clock on Friday down at Tropical Park. The rest of them, the usual times. And Monarch playing up at Coconut Creek like they always do. That's about it. Jordan and I will be back next week to talk a little bit about the big state semis as we get closer and closer. Remember, December 7th through the 9th in Tallahassee at the renovated field, Bragg Stadium up in FAMU. And one last item we didn't talk about. I skipped this on the script. My mistake, Jordan. Valley Sports stepped up to the plate. They're going to be on TV.
Let's go.
For the first time in like a decade of people either not being able to get it or having to pay. Spectrum or having to pay on the NFHS network, having to pay $10 to watch each game. No, Valley stepped up to the plate, signed a deal with the FHSA. So all 9 games, not just the 4 that'll be involving our teams down here in South Florida, but all 9 state championship games for those 3 days are going to be available to watch. There you go for the one time for the for Valley Sports, who are very familiar with their crew over there, covering the Marlins and the Panthers.
Yep, yeah, a lot of good people over there. That's honestly, it's really good to hear the Valley's doing this and makes it a little bit easier. It'll give me a chance to be able to catch up with everything and not have to just wait for Andre's recaps and sidebars from up there.
Yeah, and especially people that don't want to drive like me, having to drive 7.5 hours up to Tallahassee to see these games in person. But we'll be back next week. Jordan and I, like I said, we'll recap everything that happened in this round and look forward to the Final Four in each class as we get closer and closer on the road to Tallahassee. For Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thank you once again, as always, for joining us on Titletown South Florida.